I'm Justin Thames, Director of Governmental Affairs for the Florida Institute of CPAs, and we're at the mega conference here in Orlando. And with us today, we've got Senator Joe Gruters, one of our distinguished members of the Florida legislature and a member of the FICPA. So, Senator Gruters, welcome. It's glad to have you here.
Thank you, Justin. I love being here. I love the mega conference. You guys do such a wonderful job, and I just enjoy being here, supporting our statewide organization and making sure that they're successful with everything else that they do. And I appreciate all the support that the FICPA has extended to me throughout this session and passing some of these bills and helping me get elected to begin with.
Well, you know, it's a lot of hard work to do what you do in the legislature. And, you know, we were just talking about in another video about how does a CPA serve in the legislature and get through tax season without losing their mind, right?
Well, it takes some very patient partners, and it takes a good team. And I'm fortunate to be with a firm that allows me the chance to go up there in Tallahassee because there's so much at stake for our profession and for businesses and the overall economy of Florida. And I think that the greater good, I do give up some income. They don't pay you much as a senator. However, you know, my love and passion is to help out people and service and to do the best I can to make sure that Florida remains the best possible place to live and work. And I think we've this session, we hit a lot of home runs, and I think it's only going to get better from here.
Well, you talk about having a full plate, and you certainly didn't shy away from going to the buffet when it came to legislation. You had 69 bills that you filed this year, and spanned a whole wide range of issues that, why don't you just tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, I don't think people can really understand 69 policy bills. And for example, you can only file 6 bills as a House member. And so what happened is once I got to the Senate and I had so much freedom, every time I've been driving around town or talking to a constituent and somebody gives me an idea, and I say, you know, that's a great idea. I write it down, put it into bill drafting, and before you know it, we ended up with 69 bills. We had a lot of, you know, we had, in terms of the overall success of the state of Florida and the legislature this cycle, I would say it was a home run, and I would give it 2 words: civility and leadership. It all starts at the top. Governor Ron DeSantis, he had shown bold leadership, and he let the legislature do what they do. And Speaker Oliva and Senate President Bill Galvano really set the tone early, and they allowed the process to take place. And what you saw this year we didn't see in years past was an effort to work in conjunction with each other and respect the process, and nobody was bashing each other in the media or even down low. And it was a process that I think that everybody can call it not only good government, but good conservative government. And some of the bills that we managed to pass 14 out of the 69 bills, and some of the bills that were more important to me were, first and foremost, underground utilities. You know, over the next 20 years, you know, Florida's done such an amazing job with pre-storm hurricane preparation and post-storm recovery efforts. We've been hit with 3 massive hurricanes over the last 3 years, Matthew, Michael, and Irma. And in Irma, what we've seen is if a third of our state goes down, it's $1 billion a day in lost economic activity. It's devastating, and who it really hurts the most is the most vulnerable members of our communities. It's the seniors, it's the hourly wage earners. And Irma also showed that when these power lines go down, it can result in death. 23 deaths, 17 because of AC-related issues, not having power. A couple due to oxygen tanks not being able to be plugged in because of power outages. And then a couple of people died because of touching live wires that were on the ground. Florida has done a remarkable job at post-storm recovery efforts, but we could do a better job. And what this bill will do is it sets us on a path so we could harden our entire system. And basically, if you live in a neighborhood right now and you have power lines near your house, those are probably all going to be buried over the next 20 years. And so what we're doing, we're going to make sure that Florida is one of the most resilient, reliable, and efficient power grids in the entire country. All continuing to be at one of the lowest cost service providers, and really a remarkable job. And of course, being from Sarasota, Florida, where we were at the epicenter of the red tide disaster, we saw the economic devastation to our local businesses and the marine life devastation on the beaches. it was terrible. And most of the viewers know that red tide is a naturally occurring issue. However, what we haven't, the problem is when red tide hits us, we get funding, and then over the last 3 decades, what you've seen is, you can see the graph, and red tide goes away for a year, funding goes to nothing. And so we haven't had that consistent, steady stream of income or revenue source that we could provide the scientists the information that they need so they can go up and set up these programs to do the research that they need to do to make sure that we can mitigate the intensification of red tide in the future. So what we're doing is we set up the Red Tide Initiative, which is bringing the best and brightest people from around the country to Moat Marine in Sarasota, working with the Florida Fish and Wildlife, and we're going to have this Red Tide Initiative with a guaranteed $3 million a year for 6 years, and hopefully it will give them the funding they need so they can mitigate the intensification, because we know, based on science also, that man-made pollution has a direct correlation with the intensification. So if we could develop ways to prevent that intensification, it will help everybody, the economy, the local communities, because the environment is our most precious resource. It's our crown jewel of what we have to offer here in Florida, and we got to do everything we can to make sure we protect it. And I have a lot of other great bills I could talk about, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so you touched on a couple of things, and specifically, you touched a little bit about hurricane preparedness, touched a little bit about the environment, and I just kind of wanted to unpack some of that, because some of that is included in the tax package, right? There were a lot of good things that were included in the tax package. This year, hurricane preparedness funding. We created a sales tax holiday for hurricane preparedness. We just wrapped that up about a week ago, something like that. But also included in that same sales tax package was the business rent tax reduction, which you actually had a separate standalone bill that would have also reduced the business rent tax, but along with that incorporated one of the issues that we're hearing more about today and the rest of this week at the mega conference, which is the impact of the Supreme Court's decision on remote sales and Wayfair. So I wonder if you wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Sure. If I could say, one of the most disappointing things about session is not being able to get that legislation through the Senate and signed into law, because what we have is a $650 million pot of money sitting there. We may be the last state in the entire country to go after it. And what's happening is it's really hitting our Main Street retailers hard. If you have a brick and mortar shop, you're providing employees on the ground, you're doing payroll taxes, you're collecting sales tax, you're driving people to your store, and they're going up against the Amazons and Walmarts and other marketplace type online marketplaces, and they're selling these products without paying for any of that other stuff, and it's not a fair competition. And this bill was not designed to create true fairness in the system, because you'll never get to that point. Right. However, what we can do is our local retailers shouldn't be paying sales tax to the consumer if the online seller doesn't have to pay that same sales tax. And right now, it is owed. If you're at home, you're buying stuff from Amazon, Walmart, and some of these marketplaces, if you're not remitting your sales and use tax on a monthly basis, you're breaking the law, and you could actually get audited and have to pay. Some people don't understand that all those dollars are still supposed to be remitted to the Department of Revenue. A lot of people don't understand the system. It's hard, but what this bill does is it takes it out of the consumer's hands, and it basically what it does is it's a convenience for consumers, because the tax is already owed. So what we're doing is we're trying to make them so the marketplaces themselves are going to have to go ahead and collect that and remit it on behalf of the consumers. And the reason why that's important is when you're a struggling retailer out there and you're trying to compete, if somebody could save $20 or $50 by going online and buying the same product, it's not fair, because you are paying for the payroll tax, you are collecting the sales tax, you are doing all those things at the local level, contributing to your local economy. That's important for us to take into consideration. And when you look at all the things that we could do in terms of continuing to invest in public education, which we had a $242 increase per pupil, and that was a huge thing that people aren't talking about this year. But when we want to continue to push public education, we want to continue to push resources for the environment and other issues, here we have $650+ million sitting there that should be collected, that we can collect All we have to do is flip this switch. What I think will happen in the future is I think we'll be the last state in the country, and I think we'll eventually adopt it. But what I have to do and what others have to do with you and the rest of the team is to go out there and convince people that this is not a tax increase. This is just a convenience for the consumers, and at the end of the day, it's doing the right thing for our local brick and mortar shops out there. Because what I thought and what my original bill did was, at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned the business rent tax, and we decreased it by 0.2%, which is a huge amount. But what my bill did was it was going to deduct 2 full percentage points off of it, and that's about $450 million a year. And the only way you're going to start taking major chunks out of the business rent tax is if you find a new pot of money, because we're not going to be raising taxes because we have a conservative government with the governor in the Senate and the House. And so what you have to do is, this is a perfect opportunity because everybody is standing on the mountaintop screaming, cut the business rent tax, help these guys out. This is the only bill that you could ever match that up and make that happen. So I'll continue to fight for it. Yeah, I'll continue to fight for this, and I think it's a worthwhile bill for Florida. It's a worthwhile bill for our retailers, and I think it's only a matter of time before we can convince my colleagues in the Senate and in the House and the governor that's the right thing to do for Florida.
Well, and to your point, it very well could be one of the last states that implements it, but a lot of the other states either have implemented something or are looking to implement something in the future. Now, you have a really unique perspective on a lot of the tax issues because not very few, I don't know how many of our members know that, but you're also the vice chairman of the Senate Tax Committee, right? Yeah,
and I actually ran the tax package, and Kelly Stargell, my colleague, from Lakeland, was able to join the tax package and actually ran the bill on the floor. But I took it through committee, and it was a joint package. But really, it was I think we could do so much more once we incorporate those additional dollars, and I just hope that we can attack it in the future.
Well, that's great. Well, and it's really great for us to have a member of our association kind of leading the discussion on tax policy around the state. I mean, who could anybody envision to be better suited to really sit down at the table with some of the folks that work with the state agencies that have predominantly been in charge of state tax policy and actually have a practitioner who day in and day out knows
that really came to light when we started talking about the tax package that was passed in 2017 by President Trump and the implications that it had on state businesses. Whether it be the interest deduction or the issues that were related to 1031 exchanges. There were numerous things that were pushed down from the federal level that really created tax increases for state businesses. And here I am, everybody says they don't want to raise taxes, but on a host of companies, we're raising taxes. And what they did, so as a result, what they say is, we're going to give everybody some type of small refund or reduction in tax throughout the state, but it's not fair. It's like if all of a sudden, because we changed the tax law, Justin, and your taxes go up $100 and mine goes down $100 because they have to even it out.
Have a threshold, right?
It's still a tax increase on you. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to challenge the notion of what is a tax increase, why this matters to businesses in Florida, because at the end of the day, it's a windfall for them at the federal level, but they choose where they want to operate their businesses, and we have to be mindful of making sure that we remain the best possible economy so that we can continue to drive these high-end, high-wage jobs to Florida so we can keep more of our graduates and that we can keep our economy humming here.
Well, you certainly hit on a very important topic when you talk about helping the economy bring high-wage jobs and bring some of the technology to the state of Florida, because you also have been a huge proponent of increasing technology when it relates to the state government, specifically by bringing a task force together to look at ways that blockchain can be implemented for state and local governments. We care particularly about that because you know as well as anybody that the CPA profession has really been a leader when it comes to adopting the uses of blockchain within the private sector. And so, you know, for us to have a seat at the table in this task force was a really big deal for the profession. So, you know, thank you for really leading the charge on that bill in particular. So I didn't know if you know, all I can say is thank you, because without your support, we wouldn't have been able to manage including a CPA on the task force that'll be appointed by the governor.
Well, I think it's the only profession where it's specifically designated to have on the task force. And you're right, this is about creating a more efficient government, especially at the state and local level. And who's better to participate in that than the CPAs, who are basically auditing all these governments and who are doing everything else surrounding it. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. The blockchain task force itself is huge from Florida. We're one of the first states to put a task force like this together. And it is all about making sure that we're leading, we're on the leading edge of technology and making sure that our state's prepared to tackle the next couple of issues. And blockchain, I didn't know much about it when we started this process, but it's an amazing technology, and it will be interesting to see how far we could take it.
Well, again, thank you for supporting us on that bill. And I left the best for last in our conversation, because speaking of bill sponsors, you actually carried the legislation for the FICPA this year that made some major changes to our accounting laws in Florida and really kind of updated, speaking of bringing in some new changes to the state, updated our statutes to make some big changes that I think some of our members are really going to be excited about.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Even here at the CPE conference, having to worry about the balance between the type of hours that I take. I think at the end of the day, my renewal's not up till next year, but it's already going to impact me and the courses that I take in terms of the focus that I want to focus in on. But at the end of the day, it's great to be a CPA. I love my profession. I'm so proud to be able to represent our profession in the Senate. I think I'm the first practicing CPA in the Senate in a long time. And it's and to be able to champion some of these issues, I will tell you, it's usually the easiest bills that I'm able to run, because people generally give the nod to the profession of somebody's, if any member is a practicing participant in a profession, they tend to give a lot of leeway to your expertise and knowledge. And so my fellow senators were very accommodating, and we were able to get that passed. And you were a great presence up there in Tallahassee, along with Jennifer Green, and together we were able to knock it out of the park in the first year, which is very tough to do. Out of I think 1,500 plus bills that were filed, I think only 195 passed, and one of them was the CPA bill. So that was a kudos to your entire team. And like I said, it's an honor for me to serve our entire profession up there in Tallahassee, and know that I'm thinking always with the CPA mindset and the education and background on all the bills that we discuss up there in Tallahassee. And I hopefully everybody thinks it's well worth it having a CPA, and hopefully we'll get other CPAs elected in the near future.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for being with us today. We hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. It's been great sitting down with you, as always, and we'll look forward to having you back on in the future and get some more discussions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Justin.